Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Dylan Teaches Finance podcast this week. We're so glad you're here. We have a very fun show, that is vulnerable. Our guest today is Nicole Drespel. She is a writer. She's written many fun shows. You might know her from writing holiday TV movies. That's sort of jam. She loves doing it. We're going to talk to her about what is money when you have a child. She had her young one January 23. And then into 23, we had a strike of writers, a strike of actors. So income changed. And we're in kind of a contraction, as we talk about in the industry right now. So there's not as much work going around. Lots to happen when you now also have all these other expenses for children. So we talk about how does she make decisions with money, with children, with her partner as well. And also going into what is the right amount she has. Like, she has a runway in mind that she wants to have set aside. She tells us, this is great. She tells us it's $1 million she wants to set aside. We're going to talk about that, what that $1 million means, how many months of living expenses that is on the podcast as well. If you're enjoying this and if you want to work on your money, if you're interested in setting up goals, if you're interested in saying, I want a system and I need accountability with my finances, then head to my website, dylanteachesfinance.com. Schedule a one-on-one call for free and we'll have this conversation. We'll figure out what you want to work on. I'll recommend right in that meeting what you can do better and also what success looks like. Look what that roadmap is. If we were to work together, what would look like and where you want to get to. It's been so hard to get to. So when people talk about New York, it's always that it's like changing or like it's changed so much in the last 5 years. It's changed in the last 10 years. Do you feel like Astoria has changed since you've started being there?
There are so many more vape shops in the last 4 years. That's the biggest difference.
That's it.
Mm-hmm,
it used to
that's
be
it.
bank. Yeah, it was banks on every corner originally. Now it's just
And
those
then,
banks are gone. And now it's vape
and then
shops.
it was dentists and bicycle repair shops on every corner. And now it's just vape. That's like the cliche. It's people complaining on Reddit about all the vape shops that open up.
Yeah, I feel like you only need maybe one or two, but just got to keep going. Same with bike repair and banks as well. Speaking about banks, we're here. This is Dylan Teaches Finance, the podcast, and we're talking about money. And when I thought about you, Nicole, I realized it's like our lives with money changed because I knew you as an improviser in New York, covering your own bills, covering your own rent. You have a partner, you have a child, you have health insurance for all of them. I was curious, like for a lot of folks who I work with as a coach, they are about to have children or they want to start the process of building out their family. So I'd really love to hear from you today. Like, hey, what has that process been like? Give us the cheat sheet, if you will. Learn from what you have done. But first, I think I always like to hear from people because we don't really verbalize this thing. Is how would you say you learned about money? What was your background and how it kind of serves you now?
I would say I learned by osmosis. Not the literal process of osmosis, which I think involves something with water, but just from observing the family attitude towards money, which was always very cautious when I was growing up. My parents both worked. The majority of my life, there were like occasional layoffs or illness, but we're always working, so we were very lucky, but always, I don't want to say it was a money anxiety, but always prepared for the other shoe to drop. So like we did vacations, but not a ton of vacations. And we moved once when I was a kid into a nicer house, but it wasn't a crazy house. That feels like that's such a common thing, I think, in our social circle of people being like, I was middle class, but not too high middle class.
Yeah. We had 2 cars, but they were Toyotas.
Right, exactly. I could not tell you what cars we had. I'm not a car person. I still don't drive.
Not yet.
Not yet. What do you know?
I don't know. Maybe in your 50s and 60s, you'll just be like, you know what I love? Nissans. And then
Maybe.
that's your game.
Wow. That'd be so weird. I had jobs in high school but I don't like, this is such a blank spot. So I had jobs from the time I was like 14 on, summer jobs or after school jobs throughout the year. And obviously that money went from a paycheck into my hands because I then did things with it, but I could not tell you what that process was. And I don't think there was like a hand-holding lesson about investing and spending money. I think it was just like any discretionary spending I had from the time I was 14 on was money that I got from working or money I stole out of my mother's wallet.
Do you feel like it could have gone anywhere? Do you think it went into a bank account, or did it mostly likely go into daily fund spending at 14, 15, 16?
I think it went into daily fund spending at 14, 15, 16.
Do you have a sense of what Nicole's daily fund spending was at 14, 15, 16?
I don't know what the statute of limitations is, but I know that I got a lot of money orders from the post office so that I could buy Broadway bootlegs on eBay.
That's how, wait, you said so many things in that sentence. So what Broadway bootlegs? Are these videos or these audio bootlegs? Like Grateful Dead? Okay.
Video. At some point in time, this is so niche. At some point in time, I owned a bootleg of the original production of Merrily We Roll Along, one of 18 shows that happened after opening.
So there were only 18 shows, and you have one of the recordings of the original 18.
Yes.
Do you still have it?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I'm one of those people who has a lot of stuff left in my parents' attic.
That's going to be the next podcast, going through the attic. When you said you sent mail orders, is because that's how you wouldn't send cash, or you didn't have a checkbook?
That's exactly it. I don't know if I had a checkbook, but I think it was like eBay was you sent cash or money order.
Wow. Okay.
And if memory serves, they were like $1 at the post office, but like way more expensive if you did it through the bank.
And then how much would a bootleg cost of?
Couldn't tell you, Dylan. Absolutely could not tell you. Not a chance. No idea.
But you said yes. You were like, whatever it was. You were like, you knew what you wanted.
Gotta have it.
Wow,
Gotta
that's such a good first eBay story. Like, what were the things you bought 25 years ago on eBay as the first thing? Wow, that's really good. You mentioned how your parents were, did you say conservative in their?
Cautious.
What's an example of cautious parents that you saw, kind of?
Cautious might be the wrong word. I think I said not anxious, but I do think it was anxious. I think I just come from one of those families, and I am now one of those families. Oh, this is going to annoy my parents so much. Where it was just like constantly complaining about things costing money.
Yeah. But then if they complain about it, I can see people still buying the things. So
yeah, well,
what are we saying?
Like life things. Like I think we moved into a house when I was 13, and the name of the owner of the construction company was constantly being used as a curse in my house because I think he didn't do a great job on stuff. So when things would need to get fixed, it was always how much stuff costs.
Did you feel like when you looked at other kids, and we'll talk about this like being a parent now, when you looked at other kids or your friends, did you feel like you were without, or did you feel like you had maybe more? How did you sense?
I think my friends fell into two categories. There were the group of friends who definitely had more because their dads were like doctors or lawyers or whatever. And then there was the group of friends who were like about on the same level as us. And I never felt comparison to the friends who had more, though. It was just sort of like, oh, cool, they had a pool. And I didn't feel envious that they had a pool because I could go in their pool.
You mentioned you're like, you are one of those conscious and cautious parents now. What does that mean? Let's go into it. What are you seeing as you reflect on it now with a 14-month-old?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think the biggest expenses sometimes come in anticipation of the baby, right? Because you've got to put them somewhere to sleep. That's one of the first big ones. And you got to stroll them around in something. And that could be another big one. Mm-hmm. And for me, when it comes to baby stuff, worry about money and worrying about safety sort of crash into each other. Because I think there's a perception, it's probably a false perception, but I think in my mind there's a perception that the more expensive thing is also going to be the safer thing. So what would often happen is we would start the research project about what we needed to buy and then get sticker shock and put it off and continue to compare and make sure that the less expensive option wasn't less safe or was less safe, and then go back and forth for truly weeks and weeks and weeks, and then eventually end up deciding we're going to buy the Stoke Trip Trap, or we're going to buy the Halo bassinet, or we're going to buy the thing that was on the higher end. But at that point in time, we've like gotten over the sticker shock and lived with the expense for so long that we've made peace with buying the most expensive thing. And that was often where we landed on that stuff, or where I landed.
Yeah. Oh, where you landed.
often the final decision will come down to me as the more safety panicked partner, which implies that Chris is not. Chris is properly safety aware, and I am safety anxious. He is safety secure, and I am safety anxious. That's my safety attachment style. And also as the person who is often bringing in the money, I think he'll allow himself to defer to me on big expenses stuff. But I will defer to him as like, okay, but I need to put this thing in your hands to research because I'm only researching through like a panicked filter. So like the slightest thing that might be wrong with that crib is going to take that crib off our list, and that might be unreasonable. So he's sort of like the reasonable person filter, but often the decision is kind of my final decision.
So you talked about crib, you talked about stroller accoutrement and all that. What about
I should say actually stroller, sorry, that was one where we did defer to Chris on it because we were deciding between Up a Baby, Minu versus Cruise.
Can I just interrupt real quick to explain to listeners and viewers? Up a Baby is kind of the, let's say, creme de la creme of strollers. It's like, I don't want to say Mercedes, but it's like, it's a very nice stroller. It's supposed to last I live off Facebook Marketplace to find old strollers, so we do that still. We find those things last for 10, 15 years. We had one that was built in like 1912. And it still ran pretty damn well.
Now, I do think that depends on which one you get, because the Minu is like the travel version of it, which is what we ended up going with. So it's like a third of the price, probably, of like the Vista and like half the price of the Cruise. And we were between that and the Cruise. And we got the Minu because it's light. It's like super collapsible. And we're like, well, we live in an apartment. We're on the second floor. We're going to be taking it in and out. So Chris was really adamant about the Minu. And God, this is so, like, just pausing to say, like, I know how like, if you're not a baby stuff person, I'm so sorry because I don't like it either, but it is what it is.
It's required listening when you were in there because these are the choices you've never made in your entire life, and you have to decide.
And now you're so deep in it, rambling on a podcast about the Minu versus the Minu V2 versus the Cruise V2. We ended up getting the Minu, and I was so panicked because you see Up a Babies all over New York City. You never see a Minu. And there were a few times where I saw what I thought was a Minu in the wild, and I would go down the street chasing moms to make sure it was a Minu for like the validation that you could be a good parent, but also have this like much smaller, lighter, collapsible stroller.
Yeah. I mean, the key phrases there, you could be a good parent. It's like deciding how you spend your money. Like you need a stroller, you need a crib. How does the other parents in the world affect, would you say, your shopping habits for your little one?
I think in the world, not at all, although it sometimes gets in my head when I'll see like a video of like somebody who went all out for their kid's first birthday, and I'll be like, I'm not giving my kid that. Like, am I not giving her the full person experience? What I actually care about is like, well, what do the friends whose judgment I know and respect and whose parenting styles I know and respect, like what are they doing? And that's like a much better barometer. But I feel like there is a perception in my brain, even though I'm money cautious, which I think really manifests as like, don't spend money on anything. And then when you do spend money, it should be something necessary. And because you care about it, you're going to spend a significant amount of money. I think might be my philosophy, because I have this perception that like, if you're buying the cheaper version of something, it's because you don't care. Like cheap is bad. Cheap means you're not invested in it. You can't be cheap when it comes to baby stuff, because that means you don't care about baby. And I think that's a big thing that I've wrestled with.
Is that you're wrestling with it? So do you hold firm on cheap is poor, like poor quality?
It's such a good question, because I don't want to say that I think cheap means poor quality, because it's so awful and obnoxious. And also I'm poor. I mean, that word is so loaded, but I'm not a rich bee by any means. And gosh, Dylan, it's so uncomfortable to talk about money. It was so much easier when it was just you and me on the phone. And now that a bunch of people are hiding, and I don't mean John, the producer, I mean the people who will eventually listen to your podcast are hiding, it's so much more vulnerable. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. I guess it's still lurking in there somewhere.
Do you have any major expenses this year
Well, we are flying to see family, and that tends to be like flights are very expensive.
Yes.
And so that will be a big expense. And then the only other thing is we are probably going to have to upgrade the car seat because she's 14 months now. And I think it's either weight or height or something. And she's on the littler end of that. And that'll be a big expense. And also, it'll just be, it feels like Chris did all the car seat research. He made the determination. I fully deferred to him on that. And the fact that now we have to do it again is so annoying.
Research is so funny because some people enjoy doing the research, living in that world. Do you feel like there's any pleasure or is it a grind?
It's a grind. For me, it's a grind. I think Chris might find pleasure in it. For me, it's just a grind.
Yeah. I see that a lot because purchasing, I'll just say, I thought this is so interesting because a lot of people come to me because fixing problems with owning a house or having a child is that like you get on Amazon, you do research, you read Wirecutter, and then you buy the product. And for a lot of folks, it can feel like our brain tells us that's work. Like we did a work. It's like we made dinner or we finished a script or something like that. But in my mind, it's not necessarily work. It's like it's spending money. It's shopping, essentially. It's shopping with details and data points. So it's good to hear, I think, healthy-wise to say like, I don't enjoy doing it because we can also think like, oh, I have all these things I have to fix. I will be using money to fix them. That is my research projects. That is my work. So I think it's coming from a good place. It's okay to enjoy it too. Like when I needed a standing desk, I researched it a lot, but it's good to be able to be comfortable limiting the research.
I think that comes back to my anxiety thing. And also I have OCD, like obsessive compulsive disorder proper, not just like fun, cute, I'm OCD. And I have this perception that there is a right choice. And so it's not just like I'm figuring out which standing desk I want. It's I'm figuring out which is the correct standing desk. And so it feels like when I'm researching, I'm not gathering information. I'm like looking for traps almost.
Wow.
Or trying to suss out the correct thing. So I think that might be why there's also no joy in it. But like if I buy little cups, I love looking for little cups.
Is that your bootleg videos of 2024?
I think it is, yeah. I think
little cups?
It's drinking devices, which is also so stupid because I go through fixation. So it's like once I get another one, the other ones are dead now.
Right. Yeah. That's tough. It's tough. How do you get off that train?
I don't want to get off that train. I can have this vice.
So this is your vice. I'm curious because we spend money on children. What are the things that maybe you and Chris used to do or how you spend your time that you're saying no to now that you've had to this last, year and a half?
Dylan, it's such a depressing answer because I feel like we have been in lockdown and then baby lockdown for like 15 years. Like we just are homebodies. And I think it's so funny how a pandemic and then a baby will change your perception. But because Chris and I were improv teachers for a long time, and then occasionally I would get like a TV gig, which would help me like pay off student loans for a little while. But then we were back to being improv teachers. And we just never spent money. Like we aren't people who really travel a lot. We don't really go anywhere. We don't go out to eat that often. And now that there's this added piece of like a kid who both needs a babysitter and also has her own expenses, it's like, okay, well, we're really not going to go out to eat or take that vacation. And it's like, well, why didn't we do it before? And it's like, well, because we were also still worried about money before too.
Yeah. So
I don't think our life has changed, which is so sad, Dylan. Or not, or it's so great.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is the catch. It's like you were ready, it sounds like, for baby life and the demands, the financial demands and the time demands in some way.
No, I got told I didn't have any eggs left and we had to have a baby.
Oh, yes. Yes. That is
Sorry,
true.
is that TMI for people?
No.
Oh, well. But that was what it was, which, yeah, sure. I had some health stuff, and in the process of figuring out that health stuff, I found out that I had abnormally low egg count for my age. We knew we wanted kid or kids, but it kept feeling like, oh my God, okay, but we're really not that financially stable. Like we have savings, but we don't know what's coming in. And it's so hard when you're freelancing to take big leaps, I think, like moving or buying something that's going to be a long-term commitment or having a kid. And this was sort of like the universe kind of being like, I mean, now or never, ma'am. And it was like, okay, well, now I guess. And I don't know, man. I'm having a great time. I love her. She's great. Who knows if this was the worst, most irresponsible financial decision in the history of the world. We were definitely not, we were in a place where I had been working a lot and had work lined up and have savings. So it was not violently irresponsible, but it was not a decision made from caution. It was a decision made from love.
From love. Yeah. But you did have some caution. You had savings.
Yes.
I'm curious, is there an amount of savings that you had in mind that you felt comfortable going forward with this journey?
No, it wasn't like we reached an amount. It was just like there was an amount in the bank account. So it was like, well, we won't be screwed in the next 2 years.
Okay. 2 years of unscrewedness, essentially, as it's technically called. So you had that runway, you feel like.
Yes.
Yeah. And you mentioned being a freelancer, how complicated it is going to be make choices because you don't know when the next paycheck is coming.
No. Yeah, I will say I don't highly recommend. I gave birth January 2023. I don't highly recommend giving birth under the constant warning that a recession is coming. That was not thrilling. And then giving birth immediately into a double strike. Also not thrilling. And then following that up with, I don't know, an industry contraction or whatever we're calling it. I mean, it's not optimal.
Can I give you some pitches on how to
Sure.
think about it? Not that I will, it's not about, I can't find the money, but ideas of like, what are the triggers to give you that? Because I have a lot of people who are like, Dylan, I need to save for the serious things, like getting a new car, starting a family, taking off a year for work to support my child, things like that, but also in retirement and all those kind of things. But then there's also, I do want to go on a vacation. I will want to see my family. I do want to maybe have fun to stay sane. I'm a big fan of trying to save for both, but making sure like what are the things that are definitely going to happen. And that is like savings for that year, for that 2 years, having that runway and knowing how much you need. But at the same time saying, okay, once we reach that point, can we start saving more for Iceland? And kind of defining what does Iceland cost as well.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you say that because that makes so much sense. And yet there's a part of me that like, I feel like no amount of savings is ever enough. Like, I don't like that we are living off of savings right now. I hate it. I think that it is fair that after 6 transactions out of my savings account, I get punished. I think I should be punished. I don't really believe that. Certainly not of anyone else. If I did believe it, it would only be of me. I think I guess this is similar to like the making big purchases of like, if before we had hit the amount of savings that we agree is the amount of savings that we want to have, and then we can start saving for Iceland. I guess if I had a long time to make peace with that, I would be able to do it. But if I imagine tomorrow, like, okay, let's start some Iceland savings, I think I would be like, no, that's so irresponsible. Put it in regular savings, like bigger and bigger and bigger your regular savings as much as you can.
As much as you can. Is there a cup runneth over situation where you're like when do you, I think I know you're going to say to this, but is there an amount in the rental savings where you can start to say, all right, let's broaden our horizons. Let's take a breath.
Yes.
Let's see some polar bears.
Yes. $1 million. If I'm answering seriously, $1 million.
How did you come up?
And $1 million cold, hard cash in a high yield savings account. Yes.
Good. A good portion of that in high yield, maybe part of that invested.
Did you know that in old-timey, like Jane Austen books, when they say, oh, so-and-so has 100 pounds a year, what they mean is that's the interest that the money that he has is earning every year. Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
That is my goal. My goal is to have so much money, cold, hard cash in a high-yield savings account that I can live off the interest. Then and only then would I feel financially secure.
Does that feel
achievable? No.
Rational.
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah. I think my level of rational is always a little quirky.
Here's my pitch on that. And not that you
Great.
How can I help you think about that? Is my question I like to ask.
I mean, you can, but I feel fine with what I'm doing.
I think that's good. I'm curious, how did you come up with $1 million?
Good question. So if you do 100,000, then you're basically out of 6 digits really quickly, right? Great.
Yeah.
2 is like, well, that's not far enough away. And then it's like, well, you basically have the same problem, like a reverse Zenon's paradox, until you get up to 1 million. Like, it's like, well, we're always too close to being halfway to not having 6 figures anymore. So we might as well just get 7 figures.
It's funny because when you started talking about this at like the beginning of January 23, being like you had 2 years of savings. Yes, that's a time question.
Yep.
Right? More than an amount. So how many months of life does $1 million buy you? Like, how much of a runway is that?
It's such a good question because I had a sense of what we spent last year.
Do you feel comfortable saying how much you spend a month right now?
Yeah, I think I'm comfortable. Potentially. I don't know. I'm comfortable eventually telling you how many months I think how many years I think $1 million would get us.
Okay. Now, people could do the math and figure out what your monthly spending.
Which is fine. I think that just feels better than giving it to them directly. This is so vulnerable, Dylan. Yeah, if people want to be little creeps, they can be little creeps. No,
I'm excited.
No judgment there.
No, I get it. This is what's so fun about this podcast, is that it's getting into the things we don't get to talk about, which the more we talk about it, the better we'll feel.
So I'm going to say with rent included, we probably spend like $7,000 to $8,000 a month on a regular month that doesn't have like Christmas or travel or something like that in it, which feels so crazy. That feels crazy to me.
Why does that feel crazy?
That's so high. You should be spending $1,000 a month.
Was that Nicole 15 years ago?
I guess. I don't even know. In my mind, outside of rent, you should spend $1,000 a month, and anything beyond that, you're nuts. Now, that also includes all the donations. I'm a monster. That includes any recurring donations that we make, which is a couple $100 a month. Or $1,000. I don't know, man. You guess. And groceries, healthcare bills,
health insurance?
All that stuff. Yeah, exactly. No. So health insurance,
SAG?
We only pay quarterly, WGA. So we pay quarterly plus like 1% of everything I make every quarter goes to WGA. And quarterly, I only pay for my husband and daughter. I do not pay anything. I don't have a premium. It's very, 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 very good insurance.
Yeah.
We're very lucky.
So $1 million would be many months, correct?
I think so. I couldn't tell you, man. That's part of why I had to go to $1 million.
Well, that's interesting because 2 years, let's say it's 8,000, let's say it's 10,000 on average, because what I see is that those monthly things, those Christmas vacations, or I need a new car seat, all that.
Totally.
Those kind of even out like maybe $1,000 more for you. So maybe it's a 9K life.
Whoa, ow. That's nuts. I'm not living a 9K life.
Which is also funny because like there'll be people listening to this that are like a 20K life, and it'll be one person or two people.
Well, good for them, but I'm not going anywhere. Remember how I'm not going anywhere? Who's in a 9K life? I gotta cut internet, I think
that's the one you're gonna cut.
I think so. That just looks like a big amount. I'm looking at these because Dylan, I categorize all of my expenses every month. So I know like, okay, in March, so groceries is probably like $700 a month. So vulnerable. Healthcare with really therapy that's out of network because my therapist dropped my health insurance, and she was right too. It's probably like $1,000 a month, and apartment is several thousand. I don't know. I don't want to tell anyone. I don't know why. So I guess when you start but then still, where's the rest of that money going? I mean, I guess we do pay for heat and hot water. You know what? Also, sorry, Dylan. This is
great.
Spiraling. Some of that is also money that automatically goes into savings accounts. That's $150.
There you go.
I don't know. I don't feel like I'm living a 9K life. Anyway, I'm so sorry. Please keep talking.
Don't. This is what I love examining this to see like, well, where does it all go?
Isn't it also so funny that it's like, well, I'm categorizing my expenses every month and everything is documented. And yet saying that number out loud still shocked me.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that tracks with my personality, which is like a lot of information, not a lot of reflection.
How do you and your partner talk about money, would you say? Because that can be part of that reflection too. Is it having a person to reflect with?
I don't know. I mean, we obviously talk about money a lot. But I think we have very similar philosophies, which again is like we spend on necessities and then like little treats that slip through the cracks. I know little treat culture has sort of gotten out of hand online, so I hate to partake in little treat culture because it so marks me as an elder millennial.
What is, as an elder statesman of millennials,
Yes.
what is your little treat culture? How would you define it for you?
So little treat culture is like I bought a coffee that was like $6 because I live in New York City. Or I bought a book that was like $25, or I bought a t-shirt that was $30. Like, I'm not going to spend $500. I'm not going to spend more than $100 on anything ever.
Right.
I don't care what it is unless it is like a health and safety necessity. Ever. Anything. More than $100 on something is crazy. But a lot of like a book and a new mug and another little thing, I guess, do add up.
How much would you say, maybe you have it in your category, what do you categorize little treat culture as? What's the name of the category?
Oh, so there is a line item for treats, but there is also a line item for books. That's its own line item. Treats really means like I ran out and like for example, on Friday last week, a new croissant specific place opened up in Astoria. And so I was like, great, I'm going to go to their 8 a.m. drop and I'm going to get in line and I'm going to try these new croissants. And there are 3 of us in my family, so I'm going to get 3 croissants. Well, Dylan, I dropped $30 because I got 3 croissants and a coffee just leaving my house. That's New York City, baby.
Yeah.
So like that would go under the treats line item.
How much did treats cost you last month?
Last month, treats was, so that was March 2024. Last month, treats was $57.18.
How does that feel?
That feels fine because it's less than $100. Let's see. Where did I go? I got a coffee. I got a coffee. I got a cookie. I got a coffee, and I treated a friend to coffee. I got a coffee and a cookie, and I got a coffee, and I tipped a lot at the coffee place because it was their first day open. And so that was all little treats last month.
Here's my thoughts about little treats. I think little treats are great. I think as a coach also, I never tell clients where to spend their money. If somebody says they want 90% of their income to go to little treats, big treats, fine, let's do it. Let's figure it out. I think it's also interesting because we think that a lot of times an expense will be really high. But when we look at it, some things that give us a lot of joy, like little treats, don't really cost that much. Like 58, I will say, I don't think that's that much. If you came to me and said 500, 600, 800, I would be like, that's a lot of little treats. And if you value it, great. But if not, maybe that's an area to cut. But it seems like it's in the right spot.
True. But like clothes, for example, was $200 last month because I had to buy new socks. And then we bought a couple t-shirts. And what was books? Books was $3.98. Okay, great. So I did fine on books.
Do you budget before the month?
Absolutely not. That's it. Sorry. No, I don't budget before the month.
Why not? Why such a strong answer?
Because I don't, because it's just true. And I'm not against, let's see. I guess I would rather, maybe this is Catholicism. I would rather the overwhelming sense that whenever I bought something, I was maybe doing something wrong than a hard and fast budget number that I had to adhere to. Do you know what I mean? Assuming we're ending up in the same place both ways.
Yeah. You like how that feels rather than the other way feels.
Or who knows? Well, yes, I do find that when I was in my 20s and not making a lot of money and doing Mint, when Mint would tell me like, you don't have any money for this. You have no money for this. I found it very frustrating. That probably took me away from budgeting forever.
It takes everybody away from it. Like there was a survey that found that like 30% of millennials had a budgeting app on their phone, but only 5% of that 30.
Wow.
Because it's the exact thing. It'll give you a message saying you spent more than you thought. Why would I look at that app? Again, of all the apps on my phone that give me some kind of micro joy, that's not one of them anymore. And I think budgeting is 50-50. I like to call it forecasting, What I like to think of is that I want you to get really good at predicting how much you will spend. And you can say $200, $400, $300, $3.84 for a book. But then you have a better sense of what you're spending. But you also, like, you're checking it. You're doing the work as well. And you're putting money towards savings still. So, yeah, you're doing all the right things. It's hard to feel safe, though. And I bet if you did, let me say this. You said we're living, let's say, 8K life, 8K times.
Stop saying that. You have to stop saying that. Because that sounds, to me, every time you say that, it sounds like I'm a millionaire.
Well, I mean,
in my brain, it sounds like I'm a millionaire.
So the thing is, I think, Nicole,
3 years ahead in math in high school. And only 2 years. Only 2 years ahead in math in high school. And you wouldn't know it today.
It's funny that you got the math wrong on how much you were ahead on your math.
Yep. I know. Is it funny or is it appropriate?
Well, I think that to give you joy, if you just needed 2 years, that's not 80,000. That's not $1 million. That's just a couple 100,000, less than 200,000, I think.
Well, when I had a baby in 2023, I needed 2 years. But now that post 2 strikes and a industry contraction and a pending recession, I need 10 years. 10
years set aside. That stuff, I want you to do stuff over the next 10 years. I want you to go to Iceland before 2035.
Well, it's fine. What we really want to do is we want to take my daughter to Disney World because my husband and I are Disney people. We want to take my daughter to Disney World when she's like 5. And there was a part of me, you're going to be so mad at me for not doing this. And by so mad at me, I mean, you're not going to care. But before she was born, I was like, I want to take the amount of money it would cost today to take her to Disney and put it in a 5-year CD so that money has gained some amount of interest and also is already set aside for 5 years from now. But then I didn't do it.
Well, you've got 4 years.
Yeah, but now...
What?
Well, that's not... I'd have to do a 3-year CD.
3-year CD. Why did you not do it?
I think it was just this comes back to something else that you and I have talked about, Dylan. I don't really set aside money for savings or invest because in the freelance lifestyle, I'm always like, I might need that money tomorrow, not in 30 years. And so it's very scary to part with it, even for something so cute and fun, like taking my daughter to Disney World.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's not, you're not alone in that. I think that... We talked
and I've set up the accounts. Sorry to cut you off. I have set up the accounts. Like I have a Roth IRA. I have a SEP IRA. We have the New York 529. Even though I don't think there will be college in 18 years, we're still doing it so that she can pay for improv classes out of it. But parting with it every year, unless I am actively working in April, I have a really hard time setting aside money. Yeah.
Yeah. If you're working at that time, you would contribute it. Here's my pitch to you. I think this is, I understand. I think when we're feeling tight, when there's a retraction or contraction going on with your industry, it's really hard to invest because you're like, I don't know what you do without that money. It's like that money needs to be in savings. I think what I would pitch to you, you know, to do this is that instead of one time, do a small amount every month because you're telling me you put a $150 away for savings. You have this idea. Maybe in those IRAs, maybe those retirement accounts that you have, doing $50 a month so that the machine is just running as well. How would you feel about that?
Well, the problem with the Roth IRA is there's also an income limit. And part of me is always like, what if I'm accidentally rich this year?
You could take the money out very easily. You could take, if you reach that limit. Trouble? No. They'll tell you. Basically, you can say like, okay, I'm over, so I need to do a withdrawal from your Roth and say like,
and you're not punished because it's already after taxes.
You can do it. Yeah, you can basically figure it out. You want to try to figure it out beforehand, before April 15th, before taxes. But yeah.
All right. Well, that's not a bad idea, Dylan.
Okay. That's not a bad idea. That's the name of a podcast right there. One good idea. Okay. Well, Nicole, we covered a lot. I really appreciate you joining me for this time and being so vulnerable and just introducing the listeners to your life, but not your social security number or where you bank. Or anything like
yes, good. Yet. Or where I store my documents either.
I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And have a wonderful rest of the month and enjoy the new croissant place down the road. Get yourself a croissant when you want a croissant.
Thank you so much, Dylan.
That was my interview with Nicole. She's amazing, funny about something that's really hard to be vulnerable with, but she's being vulnerable about it. Thank you for listening. I want to thank my producers, Will Hagel, John DeBryan. Wonderful working with them. And I hope you all have a great time. Enjoy your money.